All right, this week we should have some movement when it comes to RFK Jr., Kash Patel, and Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, the vote is supposed to be tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. But let's start off with RFK Jr. His vote is reportedly maybe tomorrow, but most likely it's going to be shoved off until Thursday would be my guess. What they have to do is first a cloture vote, which is just a procedural vote where the Senate gets together and they say, are we going to hold a vote? They vote to hold a vote. I don't understand. A lot of wasted time. It seems like if DOJ is going to do anything, maybe they can go into Congress, look at the procedures and say, let's cut half of these procedures. Don't vote on voting, just vote. So first they have to vote on voting, and then they'll decide whether or not to advance them to a full vote. And then when they're ready to advance them, they'll have debate. The senators will get up there, they'll debate for hours on end, and then they'll finally hold the vote. So it's possible that this process begins for RFK Jr. tomorrow and wraps up on Thursday, maybe even Friday. But this week, we're supposed to be getting that Senate confirmation vote. Right now, the Senate makeup, and this is what's important and why these have been dragged out. A lot of people are wondering, why are these votes not happening sooner? And it's because Republicans actually control when the votes come to the floor because they have the majority. And that is a beneficial thing in a situation like this because the Republicans can take the time to make sure that they have the votes to push the candidate through to ensure that the candidate actually is confirmed. So the Senate is at 53 GOP, 47 Democrat. And that means that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can only afford to lose 3 Republicans who end up voting no. That would bring it to a 50-50, and then J.D. Vance would have to sweep in and actually be the tiebreaker vote. So he could afford to lose 3 Republicans. With him, the Republicans that have been sitting on the fence have been pretty much the standard ones that were sitting on the fence with, like Pete Hegseth, for example, who they ultimately did not vote for. That would be Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell. Susan Collins, however, has come out saying, and it would be okay if he lost those 3. He wouldn't be able to lose any more than those 3. So he would still be okay. J.D. Vance would come in and seal the deal. But Susan Collins has come in, and she was previously on the fence, and she has announced today she is supporting RFK Jr. for HHS secretary. So that is one hurdle less that he has to overcome. The odds are starting to look really good that he is going to be confirmed as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. This is really great news. I really can't wait to have him in that role. And this is the thing. Americans voted for Donald Trump knowing he was going to put RFK Jr. in this role. Everybody knew that. This is not a surprise. He campaigned with him. He even said when he joined forces with Trump, he's promised me a role, Health and Human Services. That's what I want. Trump said it over and over on the campaign trail. Americans voted for Trump knowing this. Americans also voted for Trump knowing he would be putting Tulsi Gabbard in a position of power, Kash Patel. There were a lot of these people, and Americans voted for Trump. He deserves his team. That's just the way it should work. And these senators should understand that. And instead of trying to sidestep the American people and the way the American people have voted, they should just confirm Trump's team and give him the team that he's asking for. Tucker Carlson held an event with RFK Jr. I mean, this guy is wildly popular. I'm talking about RFK Jr. Tucker is too, but RFK Jr. wildly popular. Tucker said that the reception that RFK Jr. got when he was doing the event with Tucker was second only to Trump. Watch this.
The person we're about to invite on is the only person I've ever met who spent, 20 years being denounced pretty much every week by every single news organization in the world. And this man, in the face of opposition that no politician I've ever seen, he persisted in saying what he thought was true. And I've known this man for a while, and I've admired him for a long time. And what's amazing is to wake up in a country that in some ways is not getting better, but to wake up in a country that all of a sudden has stopped mocking this man as a crazy person and has started to realize that the lone brave voice may have been right all along. And so it's an honor to introduce Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reception that Bobby Kennedy got. He was always considered like a far-out, wacko, liberal Democrat. Last night, from people who are not far-out, wacko, liberal Democrats, just the opposite, who hate the Democratic Party, and for every good reason. He got a reception, I don't know, second only to Trump? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to see them together, maybe more intense. And Bobby, both of them, ran for president. They just ran for president. Both of them dropped out. They both lost. And it just confirms my longstanding view that I've lived personally, that, losing, being humiliated a little bit as a man is essential. It's absolutely essential. There's nothing worse for a man than to, continuous winning turns you into an unbearable person.
I really like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I would really like to see him as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. But what's interesting about this, and there are positions of his I don't like. Israel is the big one that caused me to not support him for president. I just want a president that is not bought off, that is not in the pocket of Israel. Is that so much to ask for just a president that just champions America and Americans, and that's it, and is not in the pocket of a foreign country? Is that so much to ask? It's just small things, But anyway, I do like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a lot, and that is my only real big hang up with him. But what's interesting is that, recently Trump was asked whether or not J.D. Vance would be his successor, if he was the one that he would endorse for taking over in 2028 when the primary comes back up. And he said it was too early. He first says no, and then he says it's too early. You know who that successor could be is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think he would have a real shot at nabbing the nomination if he ran as a Republican in 2028. I think he would have a real shot at grabbing it. I think a lot of people would vote for him. I think that the Republican Party would be flooded with a lot of independents that would be very, very interested in seeing him be the nominee. It would be definitely groundbreaking, historic to see a Kennedy on the Republican ticket. It would be amazing. But Republicans do like him. They like him a lot. And that is a real possibility. All right, moving on to Kash Patel. So Kash has not advanced out of the committee. They have not held the hearing yet for Kash Patel. They did the hearing. They haven't held the vote yet. They've been reluctant to vote on him. I'm surprised on this because it had been reported for a long time that Tulsi Gabbard was the one that was on the shakiest ground. But it seems like Kash Patel is actually on shakier ground. It wouldn't take this long to get him out of the committee if the Republicans, like I said, they're controlling the vote when the vote happens. The fact that they're dragging their feet on this one means they don't have the votes for him yet. And they're trying to still wheel and deal and convince some of their fellow Republicans to go for Kash. And this is taking a long time. But they are saying that this hearing, the vote will happen at 9 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. That is when the committee votes. So they must think they have the votes now. There are still people trying to sidestep this. They're trying to tank his nomination. Here was this leaked whistleblower that came forward saying Kash Patel directed the purge of FBI employees and misled Congress in his confirmation hearing for FBI director. So people are already trying to smear him, saying, he was doing all these bad things. Here is the note that a whistleblower gave to the Inspector General. I've received highly credible information from multiple sources that Kash Patel has been personally directing the ongoing purge of career civil servants at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Although Mr. Patel is President Trump's nominee to be FBI director, he's still a private citizen with no role in government. I understand that Mr. Patel's directives are being carried out through the concerted efforts of the White House Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Stephen Miller, Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, and several members of newly established FBI Director's Advisory Team. This alleged misconduct is beyond the pale and must be investigated immediately. Okay, so this person's trying to smear Kash Patel, but that's not actually what they're doing, because Kash Patel, they're right. Kash Patel is a civilian at this point, just a private person not working in the government. So if the government is listening to this private citizen, that's the government's fault, right? That's not the private citizen's fault. The blame would actually be on the people they're pointing to, which is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Stephen Miller, and Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, and several members of the newly established FBI Director's Advisory Team. If they're listening to Kash Patel and he hasn't been confirmed yet, then that's on them, not on him. He can give, I mean, we can all spew as many directives as we want toward the FBI. Hey, I think you should shut the whole thing down. Doesn't mean they're going to listen to me. And if they do, why is that my fault? So they're trying to smear Kash Patel, saying, I have highly credible information from multiple sources that Kash Patel has been personally directing the ongoing purge of career civil servants at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So what? So these kinds of smears, and not only that, but a lot of people want to see the purge. There's a lot of people fighting against all these purges that are happening, and they're just out of tune with the American people. The American people want to see less government. Even those who want big government are still wanting to see less government than what we have right now. And they're seeing that there is some abuse. Of course, Democrats aren't really admitting that, but believe me, when it's their turn, when they finally come back into power, which they inevitably will, they'll have their own Doge team. They'll just be cutting different programs. This has set a new precedent, this kind of purge, and they will be doing their own. You can definitely bet on that. All right, let's move on to Tulsi Gabbard. So we'll wait on Kash Patel. We'll see. We'll be paying attention to his confirmation hearing or the committee hearing to kind of push him towards the Senate. We'll see how that goes, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. Tulsi Gabbard, the vote was supposed to be tonight. It has been postponed until 11 a.m. Boo! They claim, it's because there's a light dusting of snow outside and we're having a snow day, says Congress. They live in Washington, D.C. It snows all the time. But they're worried because of this big winter storm. So they're waiting until tomorrow morning, apparently. I'm curious if she doesn't have the votes and if that excuse, if it's a dusting of snow is the excuse. And the reality is that there are still some Republicans on the fence, and the Republicans have not been able to fully secure the votes in order to push Gabbard through. They did have that preliminary cloture vote to decide whether or not they voted on whether or not they would vote. And it was 52 to 46. It was along party lines. There were two people who did not vote in that. That was Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Republican, and John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania. They did not vote. And both of them are, John Fetterman is actually on the fence on whether or not he is going to be voting for Tulsi Gabbard. He already said no to RFK Jr., but he may actually vote to confirm Tulsi Gabbard. Tom Tillis, I believe, will be voting for Tulsi Gabbard, but was Tom Tillis one that was on the fence on her, or was he on the fence about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? But he's been on the fence a little bit. I think he was more on the fence about Robert F. Kennedy. No, I don't know. Maybe he was on the fence about her. But nonetheless, 52 to 46 was that vote. And if she loses Tom Tillis and John Fetterman, and they end up being a no vote, that just really, it still puts her at 52-48. That still gets her through. So she's looking strong. It's looking pretty good. Now, that was just a cloture vote. That was just a vote to hold whether or not to vote. I don't know why why wouldn't everybody in the Senate say, yeah, okay, let's vote to vote? I don't understand why it would be on partisan lines, why one half would be, no, we don't want to vote. We're going to say no to voting. I mean, just vote no if you don't, vote yes on voting and then vote no on her if you don't like her. I mean, I don't really understand all the politics in Congress. I just know that they're totally ineffective. Bernie Sanders, who used to like her, he called her at one point an important voice in a new generation of leaders. He voted against her. And this is, what a spineless coward. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. I know you might think he is. He's actually technically an independent, but he doesn't act very independent at all. He just acts like a full-on, dyed-in-the-wool blue Democrat, vote blue no matter who. That is Bernie Sanders. And he now turned on Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard was one of the few brave people in 2016. She turned against the establishment. She put her career on the line, her reputation on the line, and she endorsed Bernie Sanders when the entire establishment was going after Hillary Clinton. Watch this, if you remember.
As a vice chair of the DNC, I'm required to stay neutral in Democratic primaries, but I cannot remain neutral any longer. The stakes are just too high. That's why today I'm endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders to be our next president and commander-in-chief of the United States. We need a commander-in-chief who has foresight, who exercises good judgment, and who understands the need for a robust foreign policy which defends the safety and security of the American people, and who will not waste precious lives and money on interventionist wars of regime change. Such counterproductive wars undermine our national security and economic prosperity. As these elections continue across the country, the American people are faced with a very clear choice. We can elect a president who will lead us into more interventionist wars of regime change, or we can elect a president who will usher in a new era of peace and prosperity. It's with this clear choice in mind that I'm resigning as vice chair of the DNC so that I can strongly support Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And now I ask you, stand with me and support Bernie Sanders.
So in 2016, Tulsi Gabbard did the right thing and she endorsed Bernie Sanders. She resigned from the DNC. They were all in on Hillary Clinton and she endorsed Bernie Sanders. Here's Bernie Sanders now, fast forward to 2025, and he cannot do the right thing and vote for Tulsi Gabbard, instead just going along with all of this bull that she's somehow, Putin's girl. In fact, who is this? Adam Schiff. Of course, he's on Rachel Maddow's show. So you got these two people that are just, who can really, anyway. He goes on TV yesterday and talks about Tulsi Gabbard being, just smearing her, saying she's Putin's girl. I mean, this is somebody who is serving currently in the military, a lieutenant colonel in the military. She has the highest security clearance. She's been a member of Congress. She's done 3 tours of combat. I mean, this is just sickening that a member of Congress, a spineless member of Congress, not just Bernie Sanders, but now Adam Schiff, would go and claim that she is Putin's girl. Watch this.
What do you think the American people should know about her as a nominee as we're heading toward that final vote tomorrow?
Well, first, I think it's important, as with all these nominees, to just level set. Normally, if you're talking about someone who's going to head an agency, let alone in this case, all of the intelligence agencies, you would expect a nominee to have some experience, maybe having worked for an intelligence agency, maybe having led an intelligence agency, or even at a minimum served on a relevant committee like the Intelligence Committee of Congress. Tulsi Gabbard has none of that experience. Zero, nada, zilcho. That would normally, in a normal world, be disqualifying. But she goes far beyond that. She has echoed Kremlin talking points about the origin of the war against Ukraine. She's pushed out Russian propaganda about U.S. biolabs in Ukraine, one of the pretexts that Russia wanted to use for its invasion, to the point where RT, Russia Today, this propaganda outfit, is praising her to the degree that advisors close to Putin refer to her as our girl, an interesting diminutive for someone who might be leading U.S. intelligence agencies. This is someone who met with Bashar al-Assad, came back, had, wonderful things to say about how he wanted to get across the impression that he wouldn't engage in terrible things against his own people, when our own intelligence agencies were saying he has gassed his own people. So hard to imagine someone more disqualified from running those agencies. But Republican opposition to all of these controversial, unqualified, disqualified nominees has collapsed. And maybe collapse is too strong a word because that presupposes there was an infrastructure to stand up to these bad choices to begin with. But nevertheless, they all seem headed for confirmation, which is just terrible for the country.
Oh, what's terrible for the country is that people actually voted for you to be senator. I didn't, but he is my senator now here in California. I feel bad for all of us. Sorry about that. I tried to convince my neighbors. They wouldn't go for it. Chuck Schumer also smears Tulsi and says, on the night that Putin invaded Ukraine, what was Tulsi Gabbard doing? Spending her energy blaming NATO and the U.S. for what Putin did. Tulsi Gabbard is not qualified to lead America's intelligence community. That's what Senator Chuck Schumer said about Tulsi Gabbard. So saying that on the night that Putin invaded Ukraine, Tulsi Gabbard was spending her energy blaming NATO and the U.S. Well, maybe because the NATO and the U.S. were doing, if you put up a picture of Tulsi, this is Adam Schiff. I don't want people to get confused. We're talking about Chuck Schumer now. Sorry about that. So, Chuck is sitting there saying that that Tulsi is criticizing the establishment narrative. So that's the issue. So she's, so you think that she's not loyal because she's actually telling the truth while the rest of you are trying to parrot ridiculous lines and not take responsibility for what you did, not take responsibility that the reason why Ukraine was invaded by Russia is because they said over and over and over again that they were that they were fed up with NATO expansion. Tulsi calls that out. She actually tells the truth. And Chuck Schumer's sitting there saying, she didn't spew our narratives. How dare she? Lisa Murkowski. So this is why Tulsi Gabbard looks like she's probably going to be getting through. Because again, it always comes down to, it has at least historically come down to Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell. And Senator Lisa Murkowski came out saying she will be voting to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. Lisa Murkowski says, I will vote to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence while I continue to have concerns about certain positions she has previously taken. I appreciate her commitment to rein in the outside scope of the agency while still enabling the ODNI to continue its essential function in upholding national security. As she brings independent thinking and necessary oversight to her new role, I'm counting on her to ensure the safety and civil liberties of American civilians remaining rigorously protected. So Tulsi might get through. We'll find out tomorrow, won't we? We will, for sure. So that is, it's going to be an interesting week, and let's hope that it's a productive and positive week, that Trump gets the picks that he deserves. And I like all of these people for these particular roles. There's definitely criticisms I have of every single one of them, but for these roles, I think they're good picks. They're solid picks. They're great picks even, and I'd like to see them through in those roles. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show. If you want to watch the full show, just visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.